The day Elias woke up and couldn't remember his wife's middle name was the day the dread started. Not a simple forgetfulness, but a black, yawning void where the information should have been. It was Elizabeth, wasn't it? Or maybe Marie. He didn't know. The next day, it was worse. He walked into the kitchen and the layout was vaguely wrong. The coffee maker was where the toaster should be. His daughter Clara stood there, stirring her cereal, but when he looked at her, his mind struggled to produce her age. 10, 12. "Morning, Dad," she chirped. "You okay?" "You look like you just saw a ghost. Just forgot to turn off the alarm last night, that's all," Elias lied, the knot in his stomach tightening. That night it was his wedding photo. He stared at the smiling woman in the white dress, and his memory gave him a name, Sarah. But the feeling, the deep foundational love that should accompany that name, was gone, erased. All he felt was a cool academic appreciation for a lovely portrait. He started keeping a journal, a desperate analog backup of his life. Wife's name, Sarah. Daughter's age, 11. My job, architect. But the journal wasn't safe. One morning, the entry for his wedding anniversary, October 14th, was smeared, the ink looking not like it had been written over, but absorbed. The page felt thin, dry, and brittle. He looked at the digital clock. October 14th. Panic set in. Elias locked himself in the bathroom, staring at his own face in the mirror. He focused on his own reflection, trying to anchor himself. "My name is Elias Vance. I am 42 years old. I live at 42 Willow Creek Drive." As he looked, he saw a subtle flicker in the corner of the mirror, behind his shoulder. A tiny distortion like heat rising from asphalt, but cold. He slowly turned around. Nothing. Just the white tile and a forgotten bath towel. Then he heard a soft, rhythmic scratching sound coming from the wall behind the mirror. It sounded like fingernails dragging across dry plaster. He leaned in, pressing his ear to the cool glass. The scratching intensified, followed by a faint, wet slurping. Terror gave him a temporary, frantic energy. He found a screwdriver and began prying the mirror off the wall. The glue fought him, but finally the heavy glass came free with a sickening thwack. Behind the mirror was a shallow, hollow space between the drywall and the concrete block. It was dark, dusty, and smelled like old paper and something sweetly metallic, like the metallic tang of old blood. And in the space, resting on the wooden stud, was the creature. It was small, no bigger than a large rat, but its body was unnervingly soft and pale, almost translucent. It had no eyes, only a cluster of writhing, thin, needle-like antennae on its face. Its most terrifying feature was its mouth, a round, dark hole lined with countless rows of tiny, backwards-pointing filaments like the throat of a lamprey. It was pressed against the drywall, its mouth clamped onto the thin paper surface, and it was sucking. As Elias watched in horrified fascination, the pale creature seemed to swell slightly. The patch of drywall where its mouth had been turned a dull, lifeless gray. Then the creature turned its head. Its antennae swiveled blindly, but it knew he was there. A faint, low humming sound, the true source of the slurping, emanated from its mouth. Elias felt a sudden piercing headache. Not a dull ache, but a white-hot spike of pain that felt like a drill boring directly into his frontal lobe. He stumbled back, clutching his head. When the pain subsided a second later, he looked down at his hand and tried to remember what he'd been holding just a moment ago. The screwdriver. He couldn't remember where he'd gotten it. He couldn't remember why he was in the bathroom. He looked back at the space behind the mirror. The creature was gone. The scratching and slurping had ceased. He walked out into the hallway, bewildered. He saw a young girl sitting at the kitchen table. She looked familiar, but her expression was one of deep, unsettling sadness. "Clara?" he asked, trying the name on his tongue. It felt foreign. The girl's eyes widened, filling with tears. "You called me Clara again. My name is Sophia, Daddy. It's always been Sophia." Elias looked at her, his mind a blank slate. He felt a wave of crushing isolation. He reached up, touching his forehead. He couldn't even recall his own age now. "I should write this down," he thought vaguely, the impulse to chronicle his life still lingering. He looked around the room, searching for the journal. He saw a thin, brittle piece of paper on the counter. He picked it up. The paper was empty, save for a single faded word, Elias. And as he stared at the name, the word began to blur and bleed into the dry, porous paper, slowly being wicked away. He felt the cold touch of a growing, absolute darkness in his mind. He knew he was alone, but he could no longer remember why that mattered.